Hello, everyone.
Hello. Hello.
You know how you always prepare for demo, and then the day of demo it actually doesn't work?
Every time.
Yeah, all the time. So that's happening to my computer too. It decided not to connect for whatever reason. But yeah, my name is Duncan Adjei. You can call me AD for short. And today I'm going to talk about something very boring. And I don't know why I think it's boring, but practically it's very boring, right? And it's about BDD. So I'm going to talk about, by the way, you can scan the code here just to get a little bit about me. So I'm just going to skip all the history of what I've been doing with my life to this day. But I work at Type now as a mobile engineer. So yeah, that is the QR code there. Great. So what inspired my talk? How many of us here work alone as a, it doesn't matter you're not doing mobile, but if you work as an engineer by yourself or build software for clients? Anyone? Just work as a solo developer building software for clients? Yeah, I've seen Franklin, I've seen Dan, right? Yeah. And how many also work with a group of people, like say team or like a startup, 2, 3, 4, 5 engineers? Right. And what about 50 plus? 50, okay. Daniel is a good start. So I'll take it. Dan, sorry. My brother's name is Daniel, that's why I say Dan, by the way. So yeah, 50 plus, I've seen 2 people. So if you work for just solo engineer, you work for clients, you might find this extremely boring, right? And I won't blame you if you're sleeping. But the history of this talk is about writing a code without test. So a code without test, I would say, is a crime, right? It's a crime. You need to be jailed, whatever. It's just a piece of syntax waiting to be broken in production. That's how I say it. And trust me, it wouldn't break in a dev environment. The conditions are favorable. But when it gets into production, that's where you get to see backward compatibility, cache data issues for some user somewhere with no internet, and there's so many things going to come up. And that's when your software begins to act its best. And there is this quote I learned from Marty Kagan: life is too short to build products that do not work or people do not love. And if you don't test your code, that is how it ends. The code is just going to end up, people are going to hate your product eventually. But there are a lot of, I would say, conspiracy theories, or it's not theory, it's just excuses, I should say, why people wouldn't write tests. They tell you need to deliver fast, especially Oyin and Scrum Master and the people. They will be telling you, okay, we need to deliver this fast, we need to get to the market quickly, and all of that. So we need to skip the steps. It's a startup, we don't have money, we don't have to experiment, we need to find our PMF, product market fit, so we need to deliver fast. All of these things will come up, and that will be the reason for you to skip writing tests. But it's a lie, you don't have to do that. The minute you skip the test, it means that you're going to go fast and decline faster. And it's better for you to go in a stable motion rather than go very fast and decline very fast. That's what happens if you don't write tests. And this is from a story about 5 years ago. I committed a project. I was the first person to do the initial commit. A product called Bundle Africa. Anyone heard it before? Only Franklin? Okay, Bundle Africa. So I was part of the team, founding engineers. And we built this product very, very fast. Within 6 months, we are out there. We wrote no single test. Even though the architecture of the code was great, perfect, layout, perfect. dependency ingestion, everything you can think of has been done, but there were no tests. Fast forward 1 year, everyone was lost. We were just 6 engineers. We get into the code and we have to relearn it every single day because we don't really understand. And it's not really about not understanding, it's because Duncan worked on this part of the code. Maybe Duncan is on leave or he's working on another project or another feature. You have to take over this, fix a simple issue, creating regressions. Because there are no tests or no way to prove that this code can be understood by a different person. So the content for this talk will be challenges, options, specifications, POC, outcome, best practices, and then do it yourself. So the do it yourself is something you might like. Trust me, you might not see no that code today. That is why it's boring. You're not going to see that, but it's still Flutter. Does that sound like conflict? Does it sound well in your mind? Not really, right? Yeah, because you can't say Flutter without that. It's the engine. But today we're going to see something like that. So why BDD? We need it done by Christmas. Those questions that come from the Scrum Masters. We need this to be shipped early. And onboarding is probably the oldest team. Now I'm talking about time. I just wanted to build up a story. That's why I didn't say anything. But I'm talking about time. About 7 years ago, we committed our first commit for the project. That's 7 years ago, as you can see there. And fast forward, we want to migrate all our code base from native, Android, and Swift to Flutter. And we need to get done by Christmas. We know that onboarding is the oldest thing, so a lot of people in onboarding might have left. 7 years ago, who is living in the company for 7 years? Nobody, probably some few. But whatever the case may be, a lot of people might have left the company already. So we need to understand that we need people who understand the legacy. That is what I would say. So we have new team members, new product managers, and no useful documentation. This is the challenge, right? Any company you work, I'm sure a lot of people here do have code without documentation. Every now and then we are hiring new team members, and it keeps happening like that. And that's how the way of software industry is like. So this is the real challenge. We also need to stop duplicating some of the components in the app because we want to scale across the UK, we want to expand to India, and we also want to expand to Europe. So the problem is bigger than we actually think. Remember, we have a product that is working in Android and iOS, and now we want to migrate this code base to Flutter. We don't have no documentation. So it feels as if no one would understand what to build, where we are going with this. Because clearly, there's no documentation for me to say, if I want to build onboarding, I know this is how onboarding works. No documentation, so it's a big hassle. And also, we wanted to break silos. So you realize that the company is growing, and you need a lot of people to start communicating with each other and collaborating, not single teams in their corners building things by themselves. So that's why I asked if you work in a group of teams where you have like 50 plus and you're working with 5 people, 10 people, different teams, different focus. Now we wanted to do breaking these silos through our BDD. We have complex logic in the application. We also want to scale, like I said earlier, and we need to be confident in those changes. Now, one thing that is very painful is shipping an update to break what is already working. Because remember, we have this app been working for 7 years. I'm sure, we know Tide. Anybody who knows Tide application? Tide mobile banking for SMEs? Right. It's a fintech, so yeah. And this has been working for 7 years and we want to ship new updates. We cannot afford to break anything because we have over 100,000 plus users as at the time, now more than 500,000. you cannot break this code or you cannot break this app because you have real people having their money fueling their businesses. You can afford to do any mistake in there. So a group of engineers in our team decided to fall back on tests as a way to perform this migration without having to break any of these rules that we have. That is the functioning app. We don't want to break it. We want to make sure that the app continues to work and function the way it functions, and also have a successful migration. So what is test? A piece of code that verifies another code. We all knows it. Apart from the technical explanation, I wouldn't go into that. And the simple principle we all know for testing is arranging, acting, and then asserting, right? So the minute that you say, when Duncan's name is called, right, I should turn left or maybe right. And then Franklin mentions my name. Now that is acting because a name has been called. That's my name. And arrange is I've been told what to do when my name is called. And then assert is what actually happens to test that, okay, I actually turned to left when Franklin called. So it's arranging, acting, we call it the 3 A's. So arranging, acting, and assert. And we have giving, when, and then. I know the topic is very boring. So if you frown at me, I get it. Testing is not something everyone likes. I don't like it either. As I speak with you, I closed my computer when I was coming here with a full of errors from BDD. Okay, so we are all in the same boat, trust me. So yeah, that is test. And we all know TDD. That's the normal way of writing text. You write your test and then you write your code to meet those tests, making sure that all the tests or your assumptions are passing. So that is basic. I'm not going to talk about it. Based on the same principle of arrange, act, and assert. Now let's talk about BDD. So BDD is documenting specifications through collaboration. So you are documenting your specifications. And what is specification here? We talk about that in the next slide. But to build anything perfect out there, I mean, perfect is just a cliche. You probably not get it to perfect, but get it to better, right? To build any product that meets your clients or your customers' need with few to no bugs, you probably need to have a good specification. That is what we also call requirements. Paying attention to the details. Because if it's a simple login and I cannot just log in and move on to the home page, I failed as an application, right? I just tapped my email. There was an app I just downloaded recently. I'm not going to mention the company's name because it's very popular. And I entered my email, sign up, just basic sign up. It would say successful and it wouldn't navigate. That's a shame, isn't it? And I deleted the app. I'm not saying I'm happy to do it, but I couldn't find my way around it. Because I knew I've registered the app, I should be able to log in to use it. And this is because we are missing specification. Or it could be mobile developers love to say their phone is probably old or my phone is some old version or some, yeah, one of those, I don't want to say Chinese phones, but yeah, that's how we call it in Africa. When you say Chinese phone, it means it's a fake phone. It doesn't mean that Chinese phones are fake. It's just a term that we say, right? So we say, oh, one of those Chinese phones. That's not the truth. That's not the truth. You probably missed the requirements. You probably missed something inside. So, BDD, specification, a detailed description of dimensions, construction, workmanship, materials and work done to be done, prepared by architect or engineer. So this is basically definition of specification, right? A detail. So the minute you start paying attention to the details, you get all the specification and requirements right. I know, and I've been doing this for years. I know, like, there are days we miss requirements. Engineers build and miss the requirements. It's not lie. We do miss it. Some days we miss it from the point of the Scrum Master or from the product designer or product product person, because they messed something up, and we also built that, and then the mistake comes from there, right? So there's no one to blame here. It only means that let's all pay attention to specifications, and that's why we have BDD, right? BDD is to help you, like I said earlier, documenting specification through collaboration. So the minute we start to collaborate to build a documentation and build a product based on this documentation, that is BDD. I'm going to go a little bit faster because I've seen someone go home right now before I end up with an empty room. I know it's boring, so I'm going to move faster. So breaking down the definition of the requirements, we know we get the details right. The three amigos, you are product designer, you are product lead or engineers, they all come to the scene, and then the acceptance criteria, what we call DOR and DOD. I know we all know about it if you use the Scrum and the whole agile procedures, right? So why do we need this tool? We want to be able to collaborate well through test. Now I'm going to show you a POC. I'm going to speed up a little bit. This is a POC, and this is an example of a BDD scenario. So BDD itself is a behavior-driven development. And behavior-driven development uses a syntax called jerking. In simple language, it's like English, plain English, that anyone at all can understand. And that's why I mentioned that we're going to do Flutter without that, because this is pure English. And when you call Miss V is my product, my product lead, and she should be able to understand this, right? So we have share referral screen. Scenario. So what's a scenario? The scenario is the input and output of a page. So if it has like a test field, and it's also displaying a test, basically that makes a scenario. So this scenario says shareable referral message, and it tells you given I'm on the share page, given I'm on the share referral page, when the total reward is 100. This is plain English, and this is a typical example of BDD. And that's how you're going to write all the text. And as you can see the background, you see this is Jira, right? I don't know if you're familiar with Jira. You can see this in Jira. So we are not even writing this in IDE. This test we're talking about is written in Jira. And the same test you see here is the same test we bring to code to test the entire application without missing out a thing. So I'll speed up, let's go forward. So this is example, a typical example we have in our app, right? And we have onboarding. Onboarding, enter email and phone number screen. That is when you get onto the enter email, that's sign up or sign in screen on a mobile application. So the scenario says that landing on sign up screen, I am on the market. So you define your market, whether it's in UK, it's in India, it's in open access. We have all these types of markets and apps and flavors in our application, right? So you can specify whichever you want. I see fields. Which fields you see? You see the email, phone number, referral code, sign up, the basic onboarding screens. And I say, I can submit the page. I can submit the page is an end. And I can also verify the analytics event has been also called, right? So when an action is taken, I can verify the analytics has been called. Now, what is going on here is pretty much simple, right? You are testing everything you see on the screen. I know that we are not seeing anything like API calls, test, and HTTP test. They are all happening within this, right? Now, it's very interesting that I said the 3 A's, that is arrange, act, and assert. Now, BDD also uses the same principle, but it's not called arrange, assert. It's called giving, when, and then. So given that Duncan's name is, given that Duncan's name is called, is you turn left. When Duncan's name is called, then he's looking at left. That's how it looks like in BDD. And so it's the same thing as you do in your TDD. So I'm not going to talk about this slide. So we're going to dive into practicing BDD. What is something you need to know about practicing BDD? it have a very steep learning curve. So I have these resources. I'll give it up to Josh, and then he will share with you if you want to get into BDD. I'm going to move on to the do it yourself. I had all these, but I wouldn't explain any further. I've already talked about scenarios. So this is a normal app that we would normally see. So we have the sign up page, the email password. And in here, what you see is email field, the password field, tapping on sign up, tapping on icon, and all of these. These are the things that you love to test in your app that is working, right? Building an app, you will see it. So here, you are able to say that if I enter an email, if I put some data in my forms, I should be able to get a successful response or a failure response. So let's take a look at this page. We have a sign up feature, and a valid email is a text formatted as email, and we have a valid password as well. So now when you come to the scenario outline, we have invalid email. That is the first scenario we want to test. Remember, we have happy part and unhappy part. So when you're testing your app, you don't have to focus on only the happy part. You also have to consider the unhappy part, because there are days where it might fail. So based on the same scenario of giving when then, as you can see here, given I am on the sign up page, right? When I enter an email that is invalid because of raising X, then I can't submit the form. And these are the reasons. When it's empty, not an email format, as we said here, this text should be able to pass, or this test should be able to fail. Now we also have scenario outline, invalid password. Now, as you can see, it's the same strategy for the invalid email. So the minute that you start testing these components of your app, you would realize that by the time you're done, you've covered almost everything. And we also have another scenario, which is successful, valid email and password. Valid email password follows the same strategy, and we have another submitting the forms and it fails, or submitting the forms and it passes. So when you submit the form and it passes, what should you see? Then I am redirected to the next page. That's the last line, the line 45. So basically, BDD is pretty much simple than you think it is. There is no that code, but behind the scenes, it all gets into that, because this is a feature file. The feature file will take this plain text, and when you run your build rip, we talked about build run, I'm not going to talk about it. When you run some of these commands, it generates your actual DAT codes, and we have plugins that do that for you on the pop dev. So you can use some of these packages to be able to write a very clean BDD test. And one thing about BDD is that you are able to test every component of your app. And it's a collaboration, like I said earlier. This is a collaboration between the product designer, the product manager, and the engineer. Because this is plain English, no one is writing code here. So they all can understand and contribute. So imagine that you get into a new team and you see something like this, BDD. We give you a new feature to work on, or you join a team and you want to understand what they are building. You don't really need any documentation. The test is acting as your documentation, because when I go in here, I should see what is happening on this page. Everyone here, I believe, if you can read English, understand what is going on in these scenarios on this BDD test. And this is what we call BDD. It's very boring, like you all can see. From the top, it's even boring, right? I would love to see something exciting like code, like that code, and making some API calls, but it's not really about that. BDD is a way to test your product end to end with speed, because it has a very steep learning curve, but the minute you get to understand it, it goes a long way to help your team. And you only appreciate this more if you're a product designer or a product person, because we are talking about plain English that product people can understand. Do you get it?
Yes.
So I know it's always hard to test everything in your app, but this is the last part I wanted to touch. You can even test your design systems. That is, when I get on this screen, I should be able to see this eye toggle. How many people have tested that on their app before? Anyone? Tested the eye toggle? Not the toggle action, but knowing that the toggle is on the screen. Exactly, widget testing. So with BDD, everything is under the hook. Widget testing, the unit test, the API calls, the response, the request, everything is under the hood. And you are going to write all of these. And that is what makes it a little bit harder. So I'm going to skip this part because there are so many scenarios you can test with BDD, authenticating with third parties, and then I'll leave room for any question. But there are practical examples on here that if you want to dive deep into BDD, you should probably take a look at this, especially the practical example, because we have engineers walking you through step-by-step ways to build your BDD in your app. I don't know how many of you here would love to try it at where they work.
I will try it in my personal project. So before testing it out in confidence.
Yeah, you should probably do. And the business value that this will drive, because if you're a business person, you really appreciate how the BDD will go a long way to help you and your team. You don't need no documentation, that's your documentation, right? And that is your text. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can read from there. And some of the people in the talk here are my colleagues at work, my senior colleagues at work, who are some of the people who really drive BDD, because it must to be, how many of you have heard of Alexandra? He said JDE for Flutter. Yeah, he had this talk, and we have Ron Ross for this article. So you actually see the value and how easy it is to write BDD when you watch these articles. I'm going to have to leave rooms for questions.
I have two questions. So the first one is, you said the file is actually called a feature file, right? Is there an IDE plugin that helps you to format the file?
Yes. So
yeah, and the second question is, who is responsible for actually writing the BDD? Because I saw the code is actually, the text is actually on Jira. So is it the project manager or is it always the developer that will write it?
It's always the engineer who writes it down, but it's a collaboration, right?
Okay.
A collaboration between the product person, the designer, and the engineer, the pair amigos, as we all know it could be more than that, right? They all come together. That's why it's a collaborative tool. So we don't have any situation where a feature was built and product manager doesn't even know what it's doing, because we all sat down to draft our BDD. And the BDD have to assent before you can say you have reached your definition of done.
Yeah, because where I work, like the project manager always writes the ticket, and they always have something like, when this scenario is there, this one.
That's
so I'm thinking maybe they can even just, if they understand,
yeah,
the BDD, they can even just write it down, and the developer then verifies it.
Yeah, that's a good question actually. We don't want a situation where you are just being fed with what to do. We all want to collaborate. So if you read his pipe by Marty Kagan, like I said earlier, you would understand the reason why you need to collaborate as a team, right? It's not always like the product person needs to write ticket for you, always issuing ticket for you. No, if you write a ticket for me, it would cost you more to explain to me than writing it with me, because I'll ask you every tiny details. As an engineer, I'm always thinking about so many things. So those questions will keep coming, and the ticket that you wrote might not just be I work on it and I ship. No, it will be back and back questions, and you'd rather find it more better than writing with me than just shipping to me.
Sorry, aside, do you have any other person that wants to ask a question?
Yeah, I wanted to just add more to what you said. Right, so we currently use this in our office, right? And what we do most of the time is when we are doing sprint planning, like the three amigos just come together we talk about what the future is going to be, we talk about the requirements, scenarios, and things like that. And while having that conversation, we are then writing the given when, this and this and that. And as soon as we are done, Jira also has a plugin that allows you to run these tests. You don't actually have to enter your code. So the automation testers and the QA testers can actually use that given them, and they can actually run the scenario. So it's just like, as they're running the scenario, they're actually doing the test, and they can say if it passed, it passed, it passed, or it failed. So something like that.
So does it tie up to the unit of the test? Like how does
So it has like a flow, and you can mark pass, 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 fail, fail, fail. So the testers can just give feedback right on the Jira saying that, oh, this particular scenario passed, but when I got to this particular line, it failed. And you can go back there.
Yeah, to support that actually, what Franklin said, because we work at the same company, so I think we use BDD as well. I'm not sure if they know that's what it's called, but I do see giving yeah, and I know our QA testers, that's what they use to verify if it's working or not when they are testing as well.
Acceptance criteria.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if that's exactly what they're doing or
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I mean, they are already on that part.
yeah.
Is it like a way for you to transform the BDD into TDD? Like can actually write things there.
So I would say BDD is an umbrella, right? Because when it generates all this code for you, because you're using that, when it generates all this code for you, you would see that some of these things are happening under the hook. Your pump rate gain, even if you're testing rate gain, pump rate gain will be happening, expect, and all of these things would be generated for you.
So one of the major reasons why I'm asking is, so in case you actually deploy using CI/CD, then integrating SonarCube into your application. So writing BDD, then writing TDD.
No, you're not. You're not going to write it too.
Everything is just like because at the end of the day, I still get
I get the conclusion.
Is it one of
It's not one of the other. It's BDD. It has a language on itself, on its own, that will compile, generate all the codes, compile, run your test. It will be taken as tests, okay? So it will run the test in your CI pipeline. The test needs to pass. When you run Flutter test, it needs to pass all the BDD tests, because these are translated into a normal unit test structure setup. Main, do you get what I mean? Exactly. So all the
better way to explain it is that BDD is like a pseudocode for testing. So basically, it can be converted from an actual pseudocode to like it just makes it much more easier for you to understand what is happening before transcribing it. So what happens in our office is that you always have to have BDD, and based on the language you're writing, your test will actually meet the BDD. Right? You are writing your test based on BDD. Because you might not be the one to know what the future is happening in the ticket. Maybe somebody in Canada wants the tickets and different time zone, and you need to actually test the feature. So based on the BDD, you are making sure that your unit test or integration test matches the BDD.
Yeah, like I said, you can say that way, but with Flutter BDD, what happens under the hood is translating all of this into text for you. So you need to have all the mojito or mocktail, all these things needs to be available for it to be able to pass. But it's not like you're going back to write individual unit tests. It's a very complicated topic. That's why I recommend you watch the video. My time is already up.
Yeah.
So the video that I shared, I'll give it out again. You can watch it. You understand how it works in the basic counter app Flutter. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.